You're listening to the Roovolution podcast. Join us as we bust myths and challenge common assumptions, helping you to revolutionize your rooster experience. This week's episode is all about taming your rooster. The previous 4 episodes should provide a solid foundation as we tackle the question how best to raise a friendly bird, or any animal for that matter. So whether he's young or old, whether you've had him since day one or adopted him later in life, we've got you covered. So I think we really wanted to get started by tackling one of the bigger myths out there, that handling your rooster when they're young is what makes them mean when they enter puberty.
Right. This is a really interesting one because this comes up all the time, and it seems to be based on, the experiences that a lot of keepers have had where they, like quite a few others, bring home these, day-old chicks, and they spend so much time with them and they get close to them. And then these roosters seem to become aggressive, usually once they hit puberty, once they mature.
So often just overnight.
Right.
It's not even a gradual thing. Most of the complaints we see on these groups is that, my boy was so friendly, he was my favorite chick, he used to perch on my shoulder, and then he just attacked me out of nowhere.
Right. And so what's really interesting here is that I can't really say a little truth to that, but I can say that it makes sense that people are interpreting it this way. Because when roosters hit puberty, they have that rush of testosterone. They start reacting very differently to various things. They make a lot of bad guesses about what's a threat, what should be attacked, what they need to worry about. It's really just thanks to that change in perspective from being a baby to being the flock leader, and often having really no experience doing it. They don't have anything to fall back on, so they start assuming the worst about just about everything until they learn better.
So, the other side of that is when people complain that their young rooster has just turned on them overnight, a lot of the responses that we see is that it is either, you handled them when they were young and that's why they're mean, or it's an assertion that not handling them, specifically distancing from them when they're chicks, will lead to a friendlier rooster. And, is that true, or why would that be the case if it is?
Right. Well, and it sort of makes sense, but friendly would be, I would argue, a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't lead to a friendlier bird, certainly, but it might lead to a bird who you're going to have fewer unpleasant interactions with, at least in the short term. And this is because those birds who are not handled, they're going to grow up more wild, they're going to grow up more wary about people, and they're going to be less inclined to get close enough for these things to come up. And that may sound actually like kind of a selling point. Well, I don't want bad interactions to come up with my rooster, so why would I want to handle him? The catch is that the bad actions that come up for these boys at that age aren't actually aggression. They can look aggressive, they can feel aggressive, but at that point in life, all that they're doing is exhibiting, various concerns. They're maybe making things like mating grabs, where they'll come running up and latch with their beak onto your hand or your foot. And it definitely looks intimidating. And a lot of people mistake this as aggressive tendencies, when really it's just a boy dealing with puberty, trying to figure himself out and feeling comfortable enough with his keeper to let you see that and get that close.
Right. And the unfortunate consequence of distancing, when they're so young, is that since they are so skittish and, avoidant, you no longer have that ability to easily catch them if they need treatment for an injury or illness. And that just becomes a whole big inconvenience on its own, just to avoid a few unpleasant altercations.
Right. Well, and it strikes me actually just right now, I'm thinking of, the example of like puberty for teens, right? And that comes with a whole slew of difficult, challenging interactions and frustrating situations as well. And it's almost like, a parent who sends their teen off to, boot camp or boarding school, they don't have to deal with those negative interactions, but that bond is probably going to suffer too. You're missing out on something by not being there, supporting them, remaining close to them, even if it does buy some temporary inconvenience. What we're looking for on the other side of it is that close bond where we're going to have an easy time working with them. They're going to seek us out for help. They're not going to view us as a danger. It's sort of an investment in the future in that we're accepting some more direct involvement with those struggles that we know they're going to have to navigate for the benefit of a much, much better relationship over the long term.
Absolutely. And again, I think that it's like you said, long-term benefit in so many ways that I think a lot of keepers don't even stop to consider. And this isn't even one that, we're necessarily going to have to deal with in our specific situation, but everyone with mixed flocks out there who hatch out their next generation of egg layers and consequently get some roosters in there as well, they have an elder to look up, to learn from, right? This is a benefit years down the road, like every year down the road. Any new chick that hatches out is able to learn from that boy that you did take that time with, that you did develop that bond with. They're going to learn that humans are safe from an even earlier age, and you're going to have an easier time with every future generation.
Yeah, that's actually a really important point, and one that I think a lot of keepers don't consider, is that these are incredibly social animals, and they do tell each other things, maybe not in English, in human words, but they communicate what's safe, what areas are safe to lay in, what food is safe to eat. Their entire flock existence depends on this kind of sharing of information. So when we raise a rooster who's going to give us a wide berth like that, it may bring a little bit of convenience at some moments, but it's also going to mean that he's going to have a desire to keep his hens away from us. A lot of people, even if they don't want to get close to their rooster because they find that intimidating or they're concerned about risk of injury, they do want to be close to the hens, and he's the gatekeeper. Also, any other chicks, as you said, that hatch in the flock, they're going to be learning from those older birds what they should get close to, how they should respond to things. So it becomes this really insidious domino effect where that anxiety in that one flock leader is going to trickle down into everything else that you have to do with the flock. And he really is going to decide whether they're comfortable with you and close to you or not.
Definitely. So the main takeaway there is, it really is worth the investment, of time and, temporary struggle to stick by them through those rough patches, during puberty and, through those mistakes that they make. When they learn from you that you are without a doubt safe and, a source of security, not only will that last for that bird and your relationship with that single bird, but like we just said, it's going to trickle down and it's going to be applied to the hens, to the future generations of chicks, and you can really set yourself up for a wonderful experience for years and years to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even unheard of for those boys who are close to their keeper to actually seek them out and tell them about problems. So, you see all the time how it's so hard to identify when something's wrong in the flock or there's an issue that you need to address. Imagine having a rooster who is going to actually alert you, get your attention, and direct you to those problems. And we get there by getting in close with them, by proving ourselves to be a dependable source of help. And so what can happen so easily during puberty with these boys is that they're not aggressive, they're not mean, and they're not angry with their keeper, but they are very comfortable expressing themselves to us. They're very secure. So in the same way, that a human often will indulge in, kind of worse behavior, kind of show those bad attitudes more clearly to people they're close to than strangers. It's the same kind of thing. When they act this way with us, what it's really a sign of is a belief that we will be there for them, that we won't judge them for it, and that they're safe to express themselves like that. It's, in a way, kind of a compliment, actually, when they do things like grab our feet or let us know when they're upset. It does actually indicate that they have a deep trust in us because they're not fearing that penalty or those repercussions. But this can turn around very, very quickly if we misinterpret this and we turn on them. So what they start out doing is really just trying to express to us they're having a rough day, they're feeling upset, they're feeling worried, any of these things, or just trying to sort out how to interact with us in the first place.
Or just being completely blind to their own actions. I mean, honestly, for maybe several months, maybe even up to a year or more during that puberty phase, what we've seen in our boys and what we've heard from others as well is that, when they do things like mating attempts or, that knee-jerk response to attack something that they are, unfamiliar with, they really, really do check out completely. Like they have no idea what they're doing. And you can see it in their eyes. You can obviously see it in their body language and their actions, but you can see that they are not themselves. And then that instant that they snap out of it and they come back to normal, it's obvious, not just again in their body language, but like we can see it in their eyes. Then they almost look shocked at themselves sometimes.
Yeah, there's a weird almost emptiness. If you watch very closely in these moments, it's like they're not calling the shots anymore. They're completely being automated by that instinct. And you can see that they've sort of left the building. If you watch very closely, it becomes really obvious when they're not feeling themselves and they're not in control. So this can be a really potentially damaging situation, because what we have now is we have these birds who have been conditioned from hatching to believe that humans are their friends, they're dependable, they can be themselves around them, count on them, trust them to be good to them. And then they make one of these mistakes, they lose themselves, they misinterpret something, and the keeper sees it as an attack and lashes back out at them. And this can result in a rooster who is aggressive. Yeah. But it's not because the handling made him that way. It's because that bond that he actually really did value seemingly has been betrayed. So he's going to be responding now to a perceived close friend suddenly and inexplicably becoming an enemy and a danger.
Yeah, I mean, imagine literally going unconscious and you don't know what's happening while you're unconscious, but you wake up and then someone is immediately attacking you. You don't even know why. Like it would be so devastating.
Well, and furthermore, if you think of an example of, say, a stranger breaking into your house and robbing you versus a person that you've been married to for 20 years, taking all of your things and vanishing, one of those is going to leave a much bigger impact because something much bigger has been lost in that situation. So these keepers who have their birds at arm's length, if they react to them that way, it's probably not going to leave that deep of a scar emotionally because there really wasn't a relationship there to begin with. But roosters absolutely can hold grudges. They can feel resentful, they can have hurt feelings, and they tend to lash out when they do. So when we do things like this that communicate to them that we've just abandoned them, things tend to escalate really quickly and go really bad. It could be avoided, but it requires that understanding and commitment to them and that patience.
So really all of these things that we initially view as a negative action that they are taking against us, we should be viewing instead as opportunities, opportunities to strengthen and reinforce the bond and the fact that we are a friend, we are their keeper, their caretaker, whether or not you want them to be a pet or livestock, even if you don't necessarily want that deep friendship, if you don't want to be best friends with your chickens, that can still be understandable, and there's still a good reason to sort of seek one out anyway, because there's a lot of practical benefits, as we said, both short-term and long-term. And so viewing every bite, every kick, every misunderstanding as just that, a misunderstanding, and therefore an opportunity to correct them, help them learn that, we are not a threat, that what we're doing is not a threat, and that they can trust us and be comfortable around us, really just strengthens that bond.
Right. Absolutely, it does. And it's one of those things where they're always going to be going into this at first with just uncertainty. So all of these things that they do, they really are just trying to learn. There isn't any grudge there unless we've done something to train or reinforce that. When they act so inexplicably, we hear all the time that they just attacked for no reason. That's an indication to us that we did not do anything to prompt this, which should point us in the direction of understanding that it's something on their side, whether it's a misunderstanding or something that just caught them off guard or an attempt to confirm safety. We can confirm that it's not anything we did, and that means there's something they need to be shown.
On that note, just something so, I guess obvious to us, but not necessarily obvious to everyone, but they recognize their keepers. They recognize faces, within their flock and their caretakers. And they know the difference between you and what you're holding. They know that your hands don't always have something in them. And so when they do, that might, put them on edge or make them insecure or make them concerned for their safety. If it's the wrong color or shape or size or how you're using it, it could set them off. And, I just want to really reiterate that we have to take a step back and try and see it from their point of view, because something as simple as a coffee tin that we bring the food out in can be enough to make them feel unsafe. And as soon as we can identify that as the cause and not take it personally, we can, do something as simple as put it behind our back. So it's out of view, and that's all it takes. And the boy will calm down and you can go on with, filling their feeders.
Absolutely. Not taking it personally is such a big part of this, because they live in a world where they rely on snap decisions. They can't sit around evaluating these things and weighing options the way we can. That's going to equal death in most natural situations. So if something strikes them as even possibly a little bit concerning, they're likely to react in a big way to that, at least until they get enough experience and that confirmation from us to help them see that it's not a problem. I mean, I'm being reminded right now of when our boy Ginger was, probably about 6 months old, 7 months old. I always went out in a ponytail so that we wouldn't have hair falling in the run that they could ingest and get tangled around their tongue, because I'm a paranoid mom. So always had my hair in a ponytail, was basically always upright in their run, and we never had any issues. And one day we had some grass growing in a planter that was enclosed with a hardware cloth ring, and I wanted to pick some for them, so I leaned way abnormally over to reach this grass, and that caused my ponytail to flop upside down. Ginger was just a couple feet behind me when this happened, and all of a sudden this thing of hair just comes flopping over in his face, and he made a kick at it. Fortunately, he missed my head. I just felt his foot brush my hair. But it was nothing to do with me. He wasn't recognizing that as me in the moment. All he knew is this alien thing that he's never seen before has just moved towards him, and he reacted instantly. And I learned not to lean over suddenly in front of our roosters. But it can really just be something as simple as that. And it can be so easy to be hurt by this and to feel like they were looking to harm us. But in 99.9% of the cases that I've seen, it really is just this communication barrier. It's this attempt they have to indulge in to play it safe, and avoiding taking risks is really what it comes down to. So we always try to look to any time that they do anything rough, any time that they attack, because of course our boys were hand raised and handled a ton as chicks, and they're about the sweetest guys on the planet. But they still have their moments where they get worried about something or they're frustrated about something, and they let us know that. And we just try to see every single situation like that as them attempting to tell us that they have some problem. Something is wrong in their environment, something is being misunderstood, and we see it as our role to help bridge that gap, show them that everything is all right, and basically demonstrate whatever it is that we need them to see. If they're incorrectly interpreting something as a threat, it is our job to demonstrate that it isn't.
Definitely. And so, to sort of wrap that up, that's every action that they take that might be Misinterpreted is an opportunity for us to reinforce our role to them, but also every action we take is another opportunity for us to reinforce that same thing to them. It doesn't even have to be initiated by their method of communication. It doesn't have to be started by an attack or a misunderstanding. Oftentimes a chicken, rooster, or hen will not go so far out of their way to tell you that they're hurting, that they have an injury or an illness. But if we notice it and we don't just shrug it off and say, oh, they'll be fine, they'll heal from it. If we take that as an opportunity to, bring them inside, to inspect them, to show them that we notice that injury, big or small, really, just a scratch on their leg, or, something as bad as like a broken off spur or a big, flesh wound. If we prove to them that we are attentive enough and caring enough to not only notice it, but take our time to address it, that it's so powerful. It's such an indicator to them that, not only are we safe, but we are helpful. We are actively helping them heal, potentially quicker, or, we're helping them relieve pain.
Right. I mean, we become at minimum a very, very valuable resource that they're going to want to keep around and keep close. But I think more likely we become an actual trusted friend at that point. And this is the thing, it's so easy. Like, we can feel this when one of our birds has some problem or injury and we're able to rescue them and we're able to help and make it all better. We feel that bond strengthen just the same as they do. But it's important to recognize those emotional injuries or problems that they might have as an opportunity to help in the same way. So when we see them limping and we go, oh, your leg is hurting, let me take care of that, and then we feel so good that we did something about it for them. When we see them flaring or attacking or pecking, that's an injury in the mind of some kind. So we can do the exact same thing and say, I can see that you're hurting mentally, something is upsetting you mentally, and how can I make it better?
And this actually makes me think of another sort of myth, sort of half-truth, that, certain breeds are predisposed to aggression or aggressive behavior, right? And what we've found, not only in one of our boys, Meme, but through talking with other keepers in the Facebook group Rooster Allies, the boys that tend to be more, quote, aggressive or more on edge all the time have a lot of other things in common, it seems. And it is likely more a anxiety-driven issue. And this actually has a very interesting cause or source, I suppose, right?
Yeah, so there's been, the only study that I can find into this was done to try to identify whether there's a genetic driver for increased aggressive behavior. I can't remember off the top of my head which breed it was they were studying. It wasn't one of the ones that people typically regard as genetically aggressive, interestingly. But they did find a genetic component here. But what it was that the boys who showed the worst signs of aggression, the more aggressive tendencies, had essentially a deficiency when it came to processing dopamine. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because this does support that there is something genetic potentially going on with the boys with these behavior problems. But when this gets brought up, it's said almost in a way that there's just a way to be born a jerk. And that's really a gross oversimplification of what's going on. It would
never be so grossly oversimplified in humans.
Right.
A human born with an inability to process dopamine, would be understood and, shown compassion and
right.
More tolerance.
It would be regarded as a disability, and we would be looking for ways to compensate for it and support them and help them to achieve a higher level of normalcy. And so the same thing applies here. If you look into the side effects of something like insufficient dopamine, that's going to result in things like mood swings, for instance. If they are too low in this, too much dopamine can result in things like anxiety in humans, humans at least, hallucinations, high levels of energy. And so we apply this when we look at a prey animal who's going to have this natural fight or flight response to any very intense situation. If they're in this state where they do have something more like chronic anxiety, where they're feeling like things aren't okay, they have this just general sense of uneasiness or impending doom or danger all the time, it makes a lot of sense that they might respond by attacking much more willy-nilly. They're just on that hair trigger already all the time, and any little thing might make them feel like it's confirmation that there is a problem. And of course, this is all based off of, studies into how anxiety impacts humans, simply because nobody is looking into this in chickens. The best we can do is draw these parallels. So what we know is that these brain chemicals are varying within chickens in the way that they operate. We know that they do similar things for them. And we can look to the many, many studies into human psychology that show us how that feels being in that situation. But in the same way that a human can be supported with something like anxiety through all kinds of supportive therapies and measures, these anxious boys can be supported in just the same way. Setting aside time to decompress, just holding them, giving them a moment for everything to kind of quiet down so they can reset, recover, center a little bit, and be better able to cope. So these things are really much better seen as potential disabilities or just individual strengths and weaknesses that we should not necessarily be judging them for or assuming they can do anything other than that without help. It really may be something that they have no say over either. They don't like it any more than we do. And if we can come together and we can support them and assist them with this, that can just really catapult that bond through the roof.
Absolutely. And, just to maybe put this in a little more perspective, when we say that when we compare these things to studies done in humans, I think most of us probably jump to thinking of adult humans when we talk about these disabilities and the ability to treat it or, deal with it. But it's not even that the rooster is comparable to an adult human dealing with this chemical imbalance in their brain. They're a toddler dealing with a chemical imbalance completely out of their control, and they don't have, the resources or the knowledge and experience to compensate on their own. They're unable to communicate in the same language as their caretaker, and they're dealing with this huge disability. It would be overwhelming, and they need extra support.
Absolutely, they would. And it's important to note, too, that this isn't just like a handful of rare cases. We're not talking necessarily about this crippling anxiety that a small percentage of people or roosters might have. Every single one of us falls somewhere on that anxiety spectrum. So if we see a boy who's just slightly more prone to attacking than some of his siblings, it doesn't necessarily, again, mean that he is a mean bird. It might mean that he is less able to cope with that stress and manage it effectively on his own than his brothers are. But we've absolutely found that there are always these supportive measures that can be taken. And just as with humans, once they're getting that help that they need, everything settles down, everything becomes so much more manageable. So it's just kind of a good example of why we should be open-minded about these drivers and not be content to just simplify it down to, well, he's just nasty or ill-tempered. Because really, even when it comes to humans, when a human is being nasty or ill-tempered, it is always the consequence of something in their upbringing, something individual to them, something that happened that day. But it's never for no reason. It's always a sign of some kind of fear or trauma or struggle that they're dealing with.
Definitely. So at this point, we're probably asking ourselves, how exactly then, or how do we move forward if we're open to interpreting things differently and, not taking their attacks personally, and we want to work with them, what's the starting point?
Right. Well, and that's where things get tricky for a lot of people, because the temptation when you start seeing this sort of thing is, of course, going to be to keep a greater distance, be around less, sort of withdraw to avoid injury, to avoid uncomfortable situations. Really, what's needed is to dig in. Because they will absolutely take it personally or wind up hurt or sullen or resentful if they feel like they've just suddenly lost their friend too. Even if you don't lash out at them and you sort of just disappear in a large part, they're going to be upset about that. And roosters tend to express upset through attack. They've got kind of a limited repertoire when it comes to how they let us know that they feel like something is out of sorts or needs correction. So very often the attacks will be used as a way to tell us that they're unhappy about something in their life. And that can be the fact that we're not holding them anymore, we're not around anymore, we're not sitting with them anymore. And of course, this can become a vicious cycle very, very quickly. So the best thing to do really is to safely double down. If they do something like latch to your foot or bite, don't take that as a sign that you need to stop going out there and being around them. Put on those sneakers, put on some thick leather work gloves, get back out there and make sure that they know that you are sticking with them through thick and thin and that they actually can count on you. And use those moments as a teaching opportunity where you can help kind of guide those interactions. Gently lift up your hand if they try to bite and say, gentle, no bite, or whatever you need to. And they're going to be looking to that and they're going to be learning from it. I mean, just to illustrate this example, our boy Ginger, when he was going through the bitey phase, all of them actually were going through that bitey phase with the mating attempts. And little by little, they would come around and they'd settle down from this just one by one. While they were being so bitey, we were keeping them more out to the edge of our lap by our knee where they wouldn't be in range of faces. But as they started coming around and getting better about this, we started letting them get back close to our chest, closer to our shoulder or face. Just kind of trying to be sensible and bring them around as it appeared safe to do so. Well, we got to a point where all of them but Ginger were getting to cuddle right up against our chests because they had calmed down. Ginger, on the other hand, was not only doing some of the mating attempts as well, but he was also frequently whipping around and snapping at our hand when we pet him on the back. And of course, as sensible people who value our eyesight, we chose to continue to keep him at the edge of a lap because it seemed like a very, very bad idea to bring him any closer while he was doing that. And so this continued for a while, and we started to notice that he would do things like stand 2 or 3 feet away while the other boys were cuddling and just stare silently at us. And occasionally he would release this little tea kettle-like whine that you just couldn't help but hear as complaint. It sounded like he was crying about the situation. The entire feel that we got from him was that he was heartbroken about something, feeling overlooked or ignored or rejected. And finally one day, it had been breaking my heart for so long. I decided, you know what? I'm just going to cuddle him like I do the others. I can't take it anymore. If I get pecked in the eye, so be it. I do not recommend this. Full disclosure, go about it a little more carefully. But what was fascinating is that he did not peck me in the eye. He soaked up those cuddles, didn't make a single attempt to snap, and did not resume that at all after. It literally stopped on a dime. So it turns out he was trying to tell us he wanted to be closer by ripping at our hands with his beak every time we touched him. Now, again, any logical person is going to feel like they need to pet them less and be less close in that situation. But it's so important to remember that the way they express these complaints is not always logical.
It's also important to remember that, again, every boy is unique and different, and yours could be expressing this in a different way.
Absolutely. And it's always, always important to do these things safely, test these things safely. So, if they're kicking at different clothes or shoes, or you don't even know what they're kicking at, bring a tote lid with you, bring something like a trash can lid, and just have it there. If they start going into a kick, use it to be a shield. Don't push them with it. Just hold it still to take those kicks. If they're biting your hands, put on layers, put on gloves, test these things out, but try to have a fierce commitment to sticking around. See each of these interactions as a challenge to overcome, and losing is going to be letting yourself be pushed away. So you want to get in there, you want to be strategic, and you want to find creative ways to remain close, remain safe, and reinforce to them that they really can count on you. And if you do that, once they do get out of this hormonal period, they are going to mature into some of the most trusted, bonded, affectionate adult roosters you've ever seen.
And one thing I just want to mention here, as you're considering how you're going to approach, maybe your problem boy, I guess it matters how many you have. It matters what his position is in the flock. It matters because a head roo will respond differently to being picked up and put on a lap versus a lower roo in the pecking order. I think what we have found with our boys, and they've changed positions. 3 of them now of the 4 have been head roo at some point, and it's been consistent in all of those times. And we've heard the same from other keepers. But a head rooster has such a sense of duty that even if he needs special handling, special consideration, just be conscious that any sort of confinement, picking him up, holding him in place, even if you're trying to send the right message, might just make him feel too restricted, too unable to do his duty. It might even embarrass him in front of the hens, and that can result in sort of a step backwards that you don't want to take. So there's sort of a custom approach that's needed, and the answer isn't always, pick them up and cuddle them.
Right. Well, and that kind of gets into the next subject that we wanted to talk about, which is a little bit more along the lines of how to tame down older boys. So let's say that you missed that window, of getting in early and bonding with them as chicks. When you have them as chicks, all you really need to do is not damage that relationship. You get to kind of establish it easily and maintain it as long as you do the right things. But when it comes to older boys who don't have that relationship already and you need to bring them around, it's really important to look to their perspective on the situation. As Jacob just mentioned, if this is a head roo, he's going to feel a really strong need to be able to respond and respond quickly if there's a problem. He's not going to appreciate feeling hindered, even if it is for something pleasant. But even furthermore, a lot of these boys, when we bring them in as older flock members, they're starting out very unsure of our motives. They're in that prey animal mindset. They're going to be fearful. They're going to be skeptical of our intentions. And they're going to default to wanting to keep a distance, wanting to kind of avoid that interaction since they're not really sure how it's going to go.
And just, touching back to the example that you gave on Ginger, and the time when he was really snappy, and so we distanced, and he took offense to that. He was not head roo at that time. Maelstrom was head roo, and so I think that Ginger, since he didn't have that overwhelming sense of responsibility, felt like he was missing out. However, during the period of time where Ginger was head roo, he elected to not be close and cuddle like he had wanted previously. He still hopped up on our lap, but as soon as we would try to embrace him and, bring him close for a hug, he would squirm and wriggle out and jump down, and then he'd come right back around and hop on our lap, but he would sit down as close to the edge of, the leg, as close to the knee as he possibly could, and he was content with just being pet at that point, but that allowed him to feel like he could get down if he needed to address something. He could keep a better eye out for predators, and we just had to learn to respect that.
Right. Ironically, the exact same position that caused such offense previously became his preference. So it's not even really like he just wanted one particular placement only. It was he wants to have the full spectrum of options. He doesn't want to feel cut off from or forced into any. And that's the thing, so if we have these older boys who are starting out thinking that we might be a danger, feeling apprehensive about things, the number one thing that any prey animal is going to fear more than anything else is that loss of autonomy. It's that inability to react the way they feel they need to. They pretty much have an okay shot as long as they can get away, they can move, they can respond fast. But the moment that they're captured or they're being restrained, they're at the mercy of whatever is doing that. And so this can make it obviously very tempting for them to stay out of situations where that might happen. Obviously, we need to get them close enough to see that it won't happen.
Don't mean to interrupt, but this makes me think of a lot of examples I've heard reported where a boy is acting up and the keeper picks them up and carries them around, under the assumption that that will develop a sense of safety or security, or at least trust in the keeper that, they might be being held, but they're not being hurt, and that that's going to develop that bond. But what you also hear in a lot of those cases is that, when my boy kicked me, I didn't respond badly. I picked him up and I held him just like I was told to do. But he was just shaking the whole time. He was just quivering the whole time. Should I keep on holding him? And my answer to that would be absolutely not. He's quivering and shaking because he's being controlled, contained.
Right.
It may have just required a different approach, one that doesn't involve actually picking him up and not allowing him to get away.
Right, exactly. And this is the thing, in the same way as like the observation that young roos become problematic when handled regularly. It's kind of like there's a little bit of truth here, but it's being viewed from the wrong perspective. It can calm some boys down, I guess you could say. It's kind of a misnomer again, just forcing the handling. People do it because they do see an impact from it. They wouldn't do it otherwise. But what's really happening is that bird is sort of just becoming resigned that they're helpless. So yes, they might get to a point where they don't fight against that and they tolerate it, but this is actually a radically different thing than true trust and a desire of their own to be close. And we can have the latter. They actually do really, really want that close relationship.
So much.
I think all of them do. But that fear of capture, that fear of loss of autonomy is a really, really big hill for them to get over. So the question, I guess, becomes how do we help them with this? If this is the situation we're going to be starting in and finding ourselves in, what do we need to do to get them to come around and feel actually comfortable with that situation?
Well, and it's a pretty simple answer. It's not necessarily a quick fix, and it's not necessarily the most convenient answer that we'd all like to hear, but it's little by little over time, right? It's
right.
Reconditioning with baby steps.
Exactly. And there's actually a word for this when it's used in humans. It's actually frequently used to treat things like obsessive compulsive disorder or certain types of phobias, or I believe even PTSD. But this is kind of a modification on what's known as fear extinction training in humans. And what this is it's a very, very gradual, very constructed and strategic exposure in small doses to whatever thing it is that person fears. And the intention here is for them to get opportunities to see that exposure does not result in anything frightening or negative. So when we look at translating this to roosters, again, roosters fear capture. They fear an inability to react or respond. They fear initially getting close enough to open themselves up to that danger. So we want to go through, again, these baby steps of, recognizing that getting in reach of us is going to be that first fear. Little by little, we can use things like treats to get them comfortable being close so they can see that nothing bad happens. From there, we actually kind of want to set up just very, very small moments of discomfort or worry simply for the purpose of letting them go off and do their thing and see that they were allowed to.
So it's ultimately respecting their comfort zone. That's the underlying and overwhelming rule that we have to follow in kind of all of the interactions. Whatever you're dealing with is, and we touched on this on the previous episodes, I think, as well, but like respecting their comfort zone, not ever expecting them to tolerate something that would make them uncomfortable or feel unsafe.
Right. As much as possible, not imposing our desires or preferences or logic, over theirs, not looking at their responses and saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're going to do it my way. And sometimes as their guardians, we do have to impose our will. If they're injured and they need to come inside and be caught, we may just have to do that.
Wow, but that, and then that brings you back to why you put this time in the first place. If you can build that trust and you respect their comfort zone all of the other time, if they are allowed to escape all of the other times, and you have to, restrain them in order to treat them, they will... they might squirm, they might struggle at the beginning, but if you maintain that calm energy, that calm voice, and, they'll come around to realizing that you're trying to help them and that even though you are restraining them, they are still safe.
Right, exactly. And they're going to recognize that this must be a very serious situation. If you're ignoring their wishes and their communication, it must be pretty dire. Because they've then, of course, been conditioned prior to that you do respect them and you're going to go off of their cues. So in a weird way, it's like we need them to have that tiny bit of worry pop up in their brain that something may go badly from this interaction, but only long enough for that to occur to them so that we can shatter that fear by immediately not doing the thing that they're afraid might happen. So, with our hens, when we were taming them down, what this looked like was once they got close enough to us, we would pick them up, we would set them on our lap and just try to stroke their neck feathers one time before letting them jump down. And what we were conditioning was not being handled. We were conditioning the freedom to escape. And we needed them to feel like they might not have it in order to see proven that they still do.
I mean, let's just put it in a little bit more accurate perspective for people who may not even be able to get close to their chickens. When we adopted the three, Sunshine, Lotus, and Topaz, they were very skittish.
Yeah.
And we couldn't even reach out to them without them running away. And that's the first step. The first step is reaching towards them and they run away and you're okay with that. And then you do it again a couple minutes later and they see that nothing happens. And slowly, after a week, let's say, they'll be more comfortable getting closer to you. They know you'll probably reach for them, but they can get away. And then one day, they'll be close enough that when you reach for them, you're able to touch them. And that's it. That's all you're going to accomplish on that day is you made contact and they run away. Yeah. And you have to be happy with that. And it can be a slow process, but that's what shows them that your intention is not to do something against their will. You're trying to do something and they don't understand it yet, but you're reinforcing that they can trust you to not do what they don't like.
Right.
And then eventually that'll lead to, you stroke them on the back and they run away. And then the next step is you reach out with two hands and they run away. And then you're able to touch them with two hands and they run away. And then you're able to, gently put a little pressure on both of their wings and they run away. And then you're able to lift them half an inch off the ground and then they run away. And it could be, this is all before setting them on your lap and stroking them once on the neck and then they run away.
Well, and it's worth noting,
baby steps, right?
It's worth noting that they are very, very fast learners. Every single time that they get this opportunity to see that they're still safe, that's going to make a huge, dent in all of this.
And I suppose it comes down to how much time you have to commit to this, right? So if you're able to spend hours and hours a day, you're going to be able to go from step 1 to step 10, possibly all in the same day. Whereas if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day to do this, it could take a few weeks.
Right. Well, and it comes down to the individual too, just kind of as maybe an example that could be informative. With our 3 girls, after starting this, we were just sitting out in kind of a penned, smaller area where they couldn't get too far from us for an hour each day. It was specifically an hour every single day. And we would just sit and be present. We'd bring them treats. We'd let them eat them a few feet away if that was their comfort level, or drop them a little closer over time. And again, we started this once they were willing to at least pause beside our legs as we sat on the ground with them. And from there, one of those girls, no joke, it maybe took 3 days before she stayed on her own and even laid down. The other two took a little while longer to come around, probably just individual temperament. But these days, you cannot get rid of them.
All three of them are more cuddly and seek out, lap time and pets and cuddles more than our two girls that we raised from day-old chicks.
Yeah, they really do. One of those girls, the one who came around first, will follow me around as I scoop the run and dig at my ankle with her foot until I crouch down and pick her up and hug her. She also knows how to ask for more hugs by dragging her beak on my shoulder, and she'll nip quite hard, actually, through my jeans if she's not getting attention quickly enough because, someone else is being held. All three of them, though, are just joined at our hip and completely fearless, completely, totally secure. And it is because they just have this unshakable conviction that if they need something, if they need to leave, even if that's just to get a drink of water, they know we're going to let them. And that is the crucial thing. They need to know that they're not going to lose their ability to react if they let us do this.
And I know I said I would be doing this more and more, but I have to say this again applies to any animal. Dogs, cats, any kind of bird, wild animal or domesticated animal. If you want to make a friend with a wild bird, you can use these same methods, right? You can go out on your porch and put some seed nearby, and that will attract the birds to get closer. And then, gradually you put the pile of seed a little bit closer to you, and they will gradually get more comfortable coming close to you because they know that you're not going to do anything. And then eventually, and I mean, your mom and stepdad are a perfect example of this. They now have wild birds that land on their hand, right? When they're sitting out on their porch.
And we'll come and shoot them looks through their glass doors if they're late bringing them seed. They're quite demanding, actually. Yeah. But really, it does come down to this. It comes down to understanding how they're feeling in the situation and sort of pushing that boundary just the slightest amount. You want them to have that thought in their brain that, ooh, this might be risky, this might go badly, so that you can have them immediately go, oh, it was fine, it didn't. And then the next thing is just a little bit more of pushing their comfort zone, and they're going to go, oh, this might be bad. Oh, it wasn't. And little by little, you're going to get to the point where they recognize, hey, it's always been fine. And that's where you get those confident birds that just are all over you and have no concerns, no desire to be rough or, impatient with you. So really, I mean, it's going to come down to each individual boy, but every single time that they do something to indicate to us that they don't like something or they're frightened of something or something's making them uncomfortable, those are golden opportunities to use this kind of technique and to make that an opportunity to show them that they don't need to worry about it. The more we're forcing our preferences onto them, the more they're going to feel captured and suppressed and victimized and all of these things that they are conditioned and instinctually inclined to really go out of their way to avoid. We just don't want those things connected to ourselves in any way if we can possibly avoid it.
Definitely. So, if you want to get close to any animal, but if you want to get close to your rooster, if you want them to understand that you want to get close to them, you have to project that, right? Not only through your actions, but through your emotions, through your vibe, right? Your energy. They can sense intent, right? And I think this is kind of an instinctual thing. If you think about, any prey animal and how they respond around other animals, a fox off in the distance, right? Mm-hmm. Versus a deer, grazing and passing by. A prey animal is not going to be concerned about the deer because the deer is not intent on doing anything to the prey animal. They're not making eye contact. They're busy with their foraging and grazing. And the fox, on the other hand, is going to be staring at the prey animal. They're going to be locked on, unblinking, gradually moving closer. And even if it's only based on body language, even if there is no vibe or energy that they're picking up on, it's incredibly important that we project that right intent.
Right. Well, and I would actually even go so far as to say that I think there is somehow a vibe that they're picking up on. I mean, they're so intuitive, and they have to be, to so quickly evaluate what other things intend to do to them, or whether they intend to do anything at all. When you consider something like a fox who's, intent on harming them versus a deer who just wants to live and let live, there really is an enormous difference here. And it does come down to whether that individual or being is seeing them as something to exert their will over and use to their ends, or something to allow to call its own shots, live its own life and just kind of coexist. And so anytime that we find ourselves in these positions where we're kind of in a battle of wills and we're trying to get them to do something that wasn't their idea, that is understandably going to feel potentially predatory to them, because they're going to correctly identify that our concerns are more about us, our convenience, our goals in the situation than they are about theirs. And that's really actually a kind of dangerous situation for any being, humans included. None of us really like that either, when we feel like our concerns or our needs are not being equally prioritized. That's going to make us feel very threatened and very fearful also. So in a weird way, the more we can prioritize that, look for those ways to show them that we care very much about their feelings in the matter and what they're trying to do, and facilitate that, that's going to make a huge difference.
And it might mean that something is a little bit more inconvenient, a little bit more time consuming in order to show them that. But it really does pay off in the long run. You get a more cooperative friend that may want to do something different than what you're asking, but will more quickly choose to cooperate because you have given them that autonomy previously. Like our boys, they don't free range all day, but we let them out to peck around the yard occasionally, and they thoroughly enjoy that. Don't get me wrong. And some days, all it takes is me walking back into the run and calling them over, like, come on, boys. And they will all perk up and they'll be like, okay. And they come right back in.
And
then other days, they're like, no, I'm not done, pecking at this plant yet. And I just have to wait. And it might be 30 seconds or another minute, which, if you're in a hurry, that can seem like a long time. But ultimately, it's so much better in the long run to give them that freedom, to let them finish what they're doing and just ask them nicely, come on, buddy, come on, it's time to go back in. And you can give them a couple taps and indicate like, okay, it's time. And they will choose to comply. You don't have to herd them or, corral them in. You don't have to make them do it. They will comply with just the request as long as you're respectful.
Right. It's reciprocated always. Yeah. And they never lash out at us, those times where maybe they're trying to get into something they can't or shouldn't, and we have to scoop them up and sorry, we're going back to the run. There's never any sign of animosity or frustration over that. It's just kind of like, oh, well, okay. But, even the one of those girls that we had to tame down who was not at all socialized, she is at a point now where we can literally just put our forearm out and say, step up, and tap, her wing gently, or even without the tap. A lot of times she understands what that means and she just kind of runs with it. So when we need to take her to bed, she's actually temporarily staying in the house right now. When we need to take her to bed at night, we just put our arm out and say, step up, and she politely climbs on, lays down, and off we go. It makes everything so much simpler. I've joked that we just will ask Sunshine if she wants to go outside or come in, and really confused one of the kids recently saying that, and I'm sure he thought I had lost my mind, but no, you actually can ask her and she knows how to tell you what she'd like to do.
And sometimes she tells you that she doesn't want to go. And sometimes she says, nope, it's not time yet. If we put our arm out and say, step up, it's time to go to bed, and she's not ready, she'll act like she's about to step up and then jump over our arm. And it's very clear, like, nope, it's not time for that. And But, give her a couple minutes and ask again, and then she's completely cooperative.
Yep. And every time, it proves our trustworthiness that we will listen to her and we will consider her feelings in these matters. And you might think, that they wouldn't really be able to recognize that, but I think it's hardwired. I think for any being, we understand when we're being considered, and we understand when our worries are taken into consideration, when we're being valued. Just all of this is really at an instinctual level. And even if they can't understand the exact words we say or the ways that we show this, that sentiment is going to come through. So as long as we're in that right frame of mind and we are genuinely considerate of how they're going to be affected, whether they're going to be frightened or uncomfortable, they're going to detect that, and it's going to really speak to our credit and in our favor with any future interactions. And this is a compounding database. Every time we get an interaction like this, it just strengthens that relationship.
Absolutely. So after all of that, we haven't really given you a step-by-step method. We haven't given you a playbook necessarily on how to tame your rooster. It's more of a mindset, right? It's more of an attitude we have to adopt. And if we can understand why we need to view things this different way, then it becomes a lot easier to implement it. And it's not a necessarily one size fits all or one method works for all. Like we've said multiple times, the boys are individuals. Every animal is an individual, and you're going to have to tweak that here and there to accommodate the individual you're working with. So it's less about do this and it will work, and more about understand this and you can find what works.
Right. This is the foundation, and these are the general principles that are going to be the best starting point you can possibly have. But from there, there are these cases where, something a little bit weird is going on. Take, for instance, rescue boys with unknown trauma in their past, and things can get complicated. Every single bird is going to be more or less complex to work with, and they're all going to have their own variety of factors playing into this. I do think that in the majority of cases, this is all that's needed, but there are those boys where things are just a little more nuanced. And this is actually one reason, that we help operate the Facebook group Rooster Allies. We also always make ourselves available if someone's dealing with a very complicated situation with their boy, or they're trying these things and they don't feel like progress is being made. We are always available via email, happy to consult with you at no cost, just to kind of take a closer look at what's going on and weigh in and give some more customized options that will be tailored to that individual bird. So this is kind of a start here, see where it gets you. Let us know if you find yourself needing any more involved help, and we're always happy to do that.
Yep, definitely, you're welcome to reach out to us via email, and we'll try to help you one-on-one, but we highly recommend joining the group because we'll be there to help you, and we'll see your post and be able to respond to it and give our input, but so will every other member that has their own experience that could apply more specifically to your case.
Right. And of course, members, are always vetted. We always make sure that any advice given falls in line with the particular philosophy, of trust building and actually understanding what makes these boys tick and supporting them in getting to the best place possible. So no need to fear any kind of irresponsible or bad advice there. We watch things like a hawk, no pun. But that's definitely a good place to reach out. And there are members there who have really, really detailed experience with some very extreme situations too. So you get the consensus, and you get those, really kind of expert voices who have dealt with exactly the kind of thing you're dealing with. And I'll go ahead and throw out there, we can put that in notes if that's available to us. I honestly haven't looked to see if Spotify will let us do this. I know YouTube will. But the email you can reach us at is jointheroovolution@gmail.com. Roovolution spelled exactly as it is in the show name. And we're always happy to help in any way that we can. So never hesitate to reach out if you've got some more detailed questions or you need some help adapting any of this to work with your flock or your boy. We're always happy to dive in and assist with that.
And the Facebook group is Rooster Allies.
Right, indeed. Absolutely. And we'll try to put any links we can, whatever it'll let us do.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks for listening, and we do hope to have you here again next week.
Absolutely.